I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Pam, if you would read the mission statement, please.
The Thompson School District will be a school district that empowers, challenges, and inspires students, faculty, staff, parents, school leaders, and community members to learn, achieve, and excel.
Thank you. First item on the agenda for tonight is the adoption of the agenda for January 23rd, and I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as presented. Are there any additions or changes? No? Hearing none, Wendy, if you would please call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Visda Ward.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Dave Levy.
Yes.
Mark Setter.
Aye.
Jeff Swanty.
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. And next up then is item 3.1, approval of minutes from our last meeting, January 9th. And I will entertain a motion to approve that as well.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes as presented from the January 9th meeting. Is there any discussion or are there any corrections? Hearing none, Wendy, please call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Visda Ward.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Dave Levy.
Aye.
Mark Setter.
Aye.
Jeff Swanty.
Aye.
All right, thank you. So those minutes are approved as well. Item 4.1, under public participation tonight, item 4.1 is the Thompson Valley High School Student Council update. So I'd like to welcome those folks up to the podium and introduce yourselves and let us know what you have going on.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Smith, and I am the co-president of Thompson Valley Student Council. And on behalf of Thompson Valley Student Council, I'd like to thank you all for including us in this board meeting tonight and for allowing to share what makes us Thompson Valley proud. So we'll kick things off with our athletics. Our fall sports had a great season, growing both as athletes and as competitors. A few of the highlights include our cross-country girls got first in regionals, and both boys and girls individual conference and regional champions. Those would be Dylan Schubert and our very own Kennedy Kruger. Dylan also got 10th at the Nike Southwest Regional, 35th at Nationals, and a new school record holder for cross country. Boys soccer and volleyball both earned postseason play. Cheer won conference champions for the third straight year, and they were 4A state runner-up. And our winter athletics are off to a great start with state qualifiers in girls swim and dive and wrestling, and our girls basketball is ranked 13th in the state currently and 2nd in the conference.
Hello, my name is Taylor Bottoms. I'm a freshman at Thompson Valley, and I'm going to be touching on the academics. So we have many highlights this year, and currently Sebastian Lawton is a Betcher semifinalist, and Elizabeth Teixeira was named the National Hispanic Scholar through College Board by scoring in the top 2.5% of the Hispanic and Latino PSAT and NMSQT test takers in our region. We have many new classes that are available to our students, including AVID as well as AP Seminar. So AVID, it's starting to gear students towards college readiness, touching on organization skills and time management, and it's just really preparing them for what the future holds. As well as AP Seminar, this is the first year that this class is available, and it's a foundational class that leads to the AP Capstone Diploma. I have not yet taken these classes, and I'm so blessed to have this opportunity, because I will definitely take this in the future to prepare me for college, and really, yeah. And there are 56 students who have signed on to work towards this unique graduation requirement and college readiness opportunity. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Gracie Roach, and I'm a senior. And I'm going to talk more on the newspaper and the magazine that we also have that's student-produced. It's called the Elysian Eagle. I'm the opinions editor on the school newspaper. I actually have copies if you want to read them. But it's published monthly, and we're one of the last schools around here that actually prints it on a regular basis. Even though it takes place during first hour of the day, it's more kind of like a business. Everybody has their own responsibilities, and you learn a lot about deadlines and what you need to do. We have editors, we have writers, and we even have a photographer that goes and takes pictures for us. And even with the limited money that we have that goes towards the paper, we're able to raise it by selling butter braids and all that kind of stuff. And the Elysian Eagle magazine is student-produced, where people can send in poems or short stories or essays, and it's produced not monthly. It takes a little bit longer to produce, but that's also a really cool opportunity that's offered at Thompson Valley.
Hello, I'm Kennedy Kruger, and I'm the junior vice president.
Kennedy, you can put the mic up so you don't have to kill your back.
Okay, thank
you
you
go.
so much. So a new opportunity that we have this year is geometry in construction class. And if you head out into our teacher parking lot, you can see that we've built a house for the Berthoud Habitat for Humanity, and it's a new class that incorporates construction and math, so it's great for students who love both. We also have an upcoming musical. The Sound of Music will be performed by an outstanding cast and music ensemble. You can catch these talented artists at a performance on February 15th, 16th, 22nd, and the 23rd. We also have our Give Next program, which is spearheaded by our leadership class. It is currently pursuing 6 projects to give back to our school and our community. Some of the projects these students are working on are a clothing closet for Thompson Valley, a volunteer website that will help our community plug into service opportunities, reading at the elementary school, creating gift baskets for newborns and moms at a local hospital, a school beautification project, and raising money to purchase an eagle sculpture that will be displayed at our school's entrance. Thank you.
This fall, Student Council helped with Lake Loveland garbage cleanup after the lake was drained for repairs, and in November and December, we collected over 2,100 pounds of food to donate to the Larimer County Food Bank over the holiday season. And the final thing I'd like to touch on is every year Student Council goes on a leadership conference trip. And this year we were very fortunate and lucky to have our advisor, Carmen, book us a trip to Disneyland. And so it was more than just going on rides. We actually had a very personal experience. So we had employees from Disney break up our student council and take us around the park and sort of demonstrate what makes Disney so special and sort of educate us on Walt Disney himself and like the pillars that made him, you know, the icon that he is today. So once again, thank you for having us all tonight, and go Eagles.
Thank you. And if you want to leave the newspaper, the copy of the newspaper, you had a couple, yeah, that'd be great. If you want to leave those with Wendy, and then we can grab them on our way out. Thanks so much, Thompson Valley.
Thanks, you
Good to
guys.
see you. All right, next up, Dr. Schaefer with your superintendent's report.
So good evening, Madam President, members of the Board of Education. Tonight I will be presenting to you a brief PowerPoint of some of the amazing events and celebrations that have been going on in our district. A lot of these are recent, so I'll ask Wendy to please key that up. And here we go. So for over 60 years, in an effort to support Colorado's top students, the Boettcher Scholarship is a merit-based scholarship that provides students with Colorado scholarships to attain an excellent in-state education, a vast network of alumni and community leaders, and access to additional opportunities that enrich their time in college. And we are pleased to announce that we have 6 semifinalists from our district: Sebastian Lawton, Alyssa Sauter, Tasha Reichart, Michael Doolittle, Delaney Delaney Lord and Samuel Hatton. This is extremely competitive. It's a huge honor, so we're very excited to have these awesome students as Betcher semifinalists. Nearly 4.3 million students took the PSAT in October, and those that score within the top 1% of students on the PSAT are eligible to apply for National Merit Scholarships. And once you are a semifinalist, you must complete an application, including letters of recommendation, as well as score highly on the SAT. Applications are then reviewed on a state-by-state basis, and in February, any semifinalists are notified if they're finalists. So this is also a tremendous honor. Again, top 1% of students within the nation. We have 2 National Merits semifinalists. They are both from Loveland High School, and that would be Hunter Ogg and Lucas Nelson. So we are very proud of them. Congratulations to our 18 newest graduates from Ferguson High School. Each graduate was honored at the ceremony with an introduction by a teacher or a family member who spoke about their journey to graduation. So we're really proud of our December graduates at Ferguson. Huge thank you to Otter Cares. Otter Cares, through their Innovation Station grant, has donated $25,000 for students and staff at Loveland High School to remodel the old metal shop into an innovation space for the school community. A special thank you goes out to the Otter Cares team for their generous support. Perry Conway presentation at Big Thompson Elementary School. Local nature expert Perry Conway visited Big T Elementary School to share his experiences with students and staff. His exciting presentation explored the state's amazing ascent from eastern prairie grasslands to alpine glaciers and tundra. Attendees enjoyed every minute of it. Carey Martin Elementary School's Giving Tree. Thank you to all the schools and communities that supported many of the various efforts to help ensure students had a great holiday season. Here is an example of Carey Martin Elementary School's Giving Tree, which was wildly successful this year. Sarah Milner Elementary School Canned Food Drive. While learning about serving our community, Sarah Milner Elementary's Student Council held a successful canned food drive, which collected over 350 items. The items were donated to the Philo Service Organization. Thanks to all of the families and students who participated in this year's program. Thompson School District Clothing Closet. The National Honor Society students at Loveland High School did an incredible job of collecting clothes for the district's clothing closet. They collected, sorted, and bagged over 400 pieces of clothing to help students throughout Thompson School District. Student Council of Berthoud Elementary School also hosted a Socktober and collected over 500 pairs of socks to donate to the clothing closet. And then we have our annual chess tournament. Thompson School District held their annual district chess tournament at Loveland High School on December 8th. A total of 120 students from K-12 participated in this year's tournament. Thank you, Brunch, for volunteer coordinators. Thompson School District's volunteer coordinators do a fantastic job helping ensure that our volunteers have an amazing experience within our schools. This holiday season, a thank you brunch was hosted in downtown Loveland to thank them for their hard work and continued partnership. Robotic scrimmage. Ivy Stockwell Elementary, Lorraine Edmondson Elementary, and Namakwa Elementary School robotic students recently participated in a friendly robotic scrimmage at Loveland High School. The competition was judged and run by our very own Loveland High School robotics class. The competitors had a lot of fun and also learned so much from the high school students and their elementary peers. And we hosted a kindergarten open house. Our third annual kindergarten open house was held at Thompson Valley High School. The event was our largest turnout yet, with over 200 families in attendance overall. And finally, we are pleased to recognize Tony Theisen as a 2018 Florence Steiner Award. Tony Theisen, who serves as our dual language immersion and world language TOSA, has received a National Leadership Award. The American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages honored Tony with the 2018 Florence Steiner Award for Leadership in Foreign Language Education for her contributions to the field. Tony was chosen for the honor because of her contributions to language education at the national, state, and regional levels through workshops, papers, associations, and more, as well as the quality and impact of projects she has developed. So we congratulate Tony. We're very proud of her. And finally, we have a very special live presentation this evening, and so I'm going to call Fire Chief Mark Miller forward, and I know he brought several other people with him. And then Principal Candy Smith. I'm going to ask Principal Smith also to please come forward to the podium.
Well, good evening, Madam President and Board of Education Directors. Thanks for giving us just a few minutes here to recognize a very special member of the school district. So, before I start on this, it's only going to take me about an hour or so, roughly.
Take your time.
But before I get
we're
started,
here all night.
yeah. I heard you get paid by the hour, right? So it's
Overtime.
exactly. I did want to recognize, I know brought several of my staff here from Loveland Fire Rescue Authority. Also, Chief Randy Lesher with Thompson Valley EMS is here as well. And of course, our partners in blue there, Loveland Police. It's always good to see them here also. So what we wanted to do is, and Candy, I'm just going to read a few things here. Candy also wanted to speak for about 30 minutes too, if that's okay. So, I actually, this was forwarded to me by Jeff Swanty, who also happens to be my boss and the chairman of the Fire Authority. So he forwarded it to me and said, "Isn't this a great story?" And I said, "It's awesome. We would love to recognize her." So you probably are wondering, what am I talking about? Or some of you may be. So I got this email, and I'm just going to read exactly what it said. It came from Sarah Rasmussen. And it goes like this. She was addressing it to Dr. Schaefer and Dawn. Said, "I want to take a minute to pass along a quick, heroic act that took place at Ponderosa Elementary School today. That was on the January 15th. You may have received the dispatch notice that Principal Smith performed the Heimlich maneuver on a student today. And I wanted to share a bit of the story with you. So the story goes like this. Candy was doing classroom walkthroughs this morning and found herself stopping and observing in a second grade class. During her time in the classroom, a little girl approached her for help. Candy determined that she was choking and immediately performed the Heimlich maneuver, and a glass stone was dislodged and shot across the room, broke a window actually, as I understand it, but I'm kidding. I had to throw that in there. This is serious, seriously. Because of Candy's quick response, this little girl is just fine. I know the paramedics showed up afterwards and checked her out. The outcome was obviously one of the best that you could possibly have. So what we had, well, maybe I should just stop right there first and say thank you. Only another 45 minutes and we're finished. So what we wanted to do, and I just have to say, I talked to Candy just a few minutes before tonight, and she said anybody would have done this. And I told her that isn't always the case. Some people that have the training just aren't able to sort of engage that training and act that quickly. And so that's very special what you did. I also said that I think sometimes we underestimate the impact we have on people's lives every single day, and especially with something like this. You not only saved her life, but also it's not just one person. So that little girl is going to grow up and graduate high school and probably go to college and maybe get married and have kids and grandkids, and she may even be in fact, I'm positive she'll be a high school principal, probably somewhere. So I think it's important to recognize that many people and many generations are affected when something like this happens. So thank you for that. Big deal, really is. So she said earlier she wasn't sure if it was a big deal. I'm telling you, it's a big deal. So we have a certificate here for Principal Smith. It says Principal Candy Smith for quick and heroic action in implementing life-saving measures for a student in distress at Ponderosa Elementary School on January 15th, 2019. And along with some other goodies in this envelope here, we also are going to give you one of our challenge coins. And by the way, these are worth a lot of money. But what it says on the back is commitment, compassion, and courage. Those are the values that are important to us. And that day, and probably every day, really, you certainly did exactly that, showed commitment, compassion, and courage. So great work. Thank you so much. And we love it when we were able to do this and recognize people that are willing to act in the way that you did. So great work. So thanks again. Say anything? Okay. Okay, I'm done. Thank you so much for this time,
Thank
and thanks
you.
for giving us the opportunity to
Thank
do
you,
this.
Chief Miller, and thank you, Candy.
Oops, stuff's spilling out all over.
All right, it's nice when we get to recognize something uplifting like that, so thanks, Candy. Next up is item 4.3, Board Committee Reports, and I'm just going to go down the line. I think I'll start down here with Dave Levy, and we'll just move this way.
The only report I had is that a few of our board members, along with Dr. Schaefer and Gordon, attended the bond sale. It was a fascinating experience, and I congratulate Dr. Schaefer and Gordon for how well they worked with our underwriter and what a good selection it was. Congratulations, gentlemen.
Jeff?
Before they get away, could I ask everybody to turn around and look at our heroic first responders, police, fire department, emergency service, and let's give them a big round of thanks for what they do day in and day out. The only thing I have to report is I had the opportunity to attend a Rotary meeting with Dr. Schaefer a couple weeks ago, and we heard 5 Rotary Scholarship college students speak to us, and they were all products of the Thompson School District, and it was really uplifting to see these students receive the recognition they have and to hear what they've accomplished. And they were asked a question, all 5 of them, what they felt they learned in the Thompson School District that helped them succeed the most. 4 out of the 5 said the AP program, Advanced Placement. And my first thought was, well, they learned a lot there. They're smarter as a result of sitting in those classes, but that wasn't actually it. What they learned was the discipline to study, to crack their books at night, do the extra work that it took to be successful. So when they got to college, they were prepared to be successful in college. And by the way, the 5th one who didn't talk about advanced placement is because he was never in advanced placement, but he's doing very well. He wants to be a welder in life. He was in our vocational program, and he's going to vocational school up in Cheyenne. But anyway, it made me very proud of the Thompson School District, the programs that we have here, and the successful products that we're turning out.
Yep.
Okay, so the Thompson Education Foundation, which supports all of our 16,000 students, I have 2 items to report. First of all, the Educator of the Year Award nominations are open. So think about if there is an educator that you feel you would like to nominate, you can go to the Thompson Education Foundation website, and the nomination is right there on the website. It can be a teacher, any staff member, principal, anyone who excels at their job and influences students in a meaningful way, which is pretty much everybody in the district. So, and then the breakfast is April 3rd out at Embassy Suites. So hopefully folks can attend that. It'll be bright and early. The next cool piece of information is that The executive director of the Thompson Education Foundation, Kim Akeley Sharon, is going to be traveling, and she's been asked to speak at the National School Foundation Association in February. So Kim is going to be delivering a presentation on the community partnerships and the student impacts of the Thompson Education Foundation's Homeless Assistance Fund. So really should be proud of Kim Akeley Sharon for getting to go to the National Foundation and discuss our Homeless Assistance Fund. And those are the two items I got.
Great, thank you. I have two quick ones. One is you'll notice in the agenda, and lately there's been a little bit of focus around here on career and technical education, or CTE. And just this morning, we had a meeting in this room where we convened, business leaders from, I don't know, 7 or 8, maybe 10 different business sectors in town. And some counselors and folks from some of the high schools. And what was different about this meeting is it was us as educators and policymakers listening to the business people telling us what they do in their businesses, what they need in their employees, and what the future looks like for them. So basically, we were asking them for input on what a career and technical education pathway would look like for them. In the very beginning of this, I anticipate that there will be more meetings and more input from the business sector. But it was really exciting to see that this morning. And then the second thing, I just want to put a plug in for the Thompson School District Spelling Bee, which is Saturday morning at Thompson Valley High School, I believe, probably about 9 o'clock-ish. The elementary kids go first, and they do a written test where they have to spell and vocabulary, and then a certain number go on to the oral rounds later on, and then they have the middle school is a little bit later, and they do the same process. So if you're a spelling nerd like me, or if you like that, it's really cool. And I understand we're going to try and broadcast the elementary oral portion on Facebook, maybe Facebook Live. Yes, Mike is giving me a head shake. So if you can't make it, if you don't want to get out of your jammy Saturday morning and watch kids spell, you can tune in on Facebook Live. It really is exciting, and the National Spelling Bee is broadcast on ESPN, which is a sports network. So you can make the connection there. But anyway, spelling is fun. Barb.
Sports, huh? We have some very talented art teachers in the district. They've just concluded a 2-week art show up in Fort Collins, and I went up one evening and was amazed. I think there were 10 or 12 of our art teachers from elementary. I knew some of them from years when I was teaching, up to the ones who are no longer teaching, and it was amazing to see the talent that they had and that they're sharing with our students. It was really neat. And then this is all about new experiences in my role on the board, so I went to the science fair, and that was really fun to watch. I went just to the elementary portion of it, but was totally amazed. So maybe I have to dabble in spelling this weekend.
Next time?
I don't know. We'll see. That's it.
I have no report.
And Mark?
Yeah, I went to a number of meetings over the past month. The two that I really wanted to highlight, first of all, DAC. We went down to Berthoud. I always love to get a chance to go see the beautiful library down at Berthoud High School. And so the DAC committee is continuing to do its work this month with elementary school focus right now. And then the other thing I wanted to call out was just kind of echoing what Dave Levy had said. Dr. Banks and Dave and I got a chance to go down to Denver and watch the bond sale take place. Extraordinary opportunity to actually see what it looks like, firsthand. And I'm sure we're going to be covering it a little bit later in the meeting, but very exciting. Market conditions, very favorable. So pretty exciting conclusion to the bond sale.
Thank you. That concludes board and committee reports. We'll move into public comment. Dr. Banks, is there any?
Yep, we have one this evening. We have.
Hang on just a second. Let me have Pam read the.
Yep, absolutely.
Sorry. Let me have Pam read the
the
Blurb.
statement.
Yeah, the statement,
Public
thank you.
comment statement. Because the board wants to hear the viewpoint of the public, we have scheduled time during our regular board meetings for comments from the public. The board has set aside an unlimited amount of time for public participation prior to the business portion of each meeting on the first and third Wednesday of the month. The time for each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and each individual will only be recognized once, and the board does not answer questions or respond to any comments. Thanks.
Okay.
So we have Mr. Dale Bryant.
Madam President, members of the board, and Dr. Schaefer, I'm Dale Bryant, principal at Sarah Milner Elementary School. I want to take a moment to recognize LifeSpring Church for the many wonderful things they do and have done for Sarah Milner Elementary School over the past several years. Tonight, the board will be accepting a gift from LifeSpring Church to Sarah Milner Elementary School in excess of $9,000. This gift came from the Christmas offering collected this past December. The funds will be used to directly benefit students and families with literacy instruction. In February, we will be having school-wide author studies, and as part of the author studies, each student will be able to purchase a book from the author studied at their grade level. In March, each student will be able to purchase a book from the Scholastic Book Catalog, and in April, we plan to provide every family in our school with a literacy-themed game such as Boggle, Scrabble, or Bananagrams. This gift of over $9,000 was nearly twice as much as we were told to expect. So I'm excited to see what our Literacy Committee decides to do with the additional funds. But our partnership with LifeSpring Church goes back over 10 years. We were the first school in church in Thompson School District to partner to bring in Kids Hope Mentoring, and at the conclusion of this year, LifeSpring Church will have donated over 11,000 volunteer hours to mentor at-risk students at Sarah Milner. 3 years ago, we combined efforts to provide Carnival on the Corner, a community-wide event that Mr. Swanty has participated in. The church has paid for after-school tutoring at different times, offered after-school enrichment clubs before we got the Boys and Girls Club on our campus, hosted school-wide events such as Pozzoli dinners, PBIS Around the World nights, and swim parties at Thompson Valley High School. LifeSpring Church also helps take care of the staff at Sarah Milner by providing dinner during parent-teacher conferences, giving teacher appreciation gifts, and making wonderful pies for Pie Day. The church provides for our families as well by providing food baskets and gift cards at Thanksgiving and adopting families for gift giving at Christmas. The partnership between LifeSpring Church and Sarah Milner Elementary School is a model I would love to see in every school in Thompson School District. As the principal and on behalf of the Sarah Milner community, I want to say thank you to LifeSpring Church for their love and generosity.
Thank you, Dale. All right, and that concludes public comments for tonight. We will move into item 5, action consent items. We will take these up as a whole unless any member wants to pull any of them. Let me read them all first, and then we can pull any that need to be pulled. Item 5.1 is the approval of personnel extra duty coaching recommendations. 5.2 is approval of gifts and donations. 5.3 is approval of classified staff representative leave policy, which is GDCBA. Approval of bond-related contracts. Approval of PILO intergovernmental agreement with the City of Fort Collins, in which PILO stands for Payment in Lieu of. Item 5.6 is the approval of the 2018-2019 amended budget, and item 5.7 is the proclamation declaring January as National School Board Recognition Month. So are there any items that need to be pulled off of here? Dave?
I'd like to pull, please, item 5.4, approval of the bond-related contracts.
Okay. So Wendy, we will pull 5.4 and then we'll renumber down there. So we'll then have 5.4, 5.5, 5.6, correct? Am I right there? Okay. Anything else? All right, then I will entertain a motion to approve items, having pulled the approval of bond-related contracts, the other 6 items now renumbered, item 5.1 through 5.6.
So move.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second to approve the action consent items. Pam, if you would read the approval, or the gifts and donations.
Tonight, we have two very substantial donations. The first one, Principal Dale Bryant mentioned in his public comment. This was made from LifeSpring Covenant Church to the Sarah Milner Elementary School in the amount of $9,865, which is really stunning, to support literacy instruction. So thank you to LifeSpring Church for your ongoing, many years support of Sarah Milner. The second gift has been made to Walt Clark Middle School. It's $10,125. This will cover grants to teachers for their STEM program, their science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and also for the greenhouse expenses. Walt Clark has a greenhouse, and look for the announcements in May for their greenhouse sales. I always get my basil and a few tomatoes there every spring. It's awesome. The donor was Rick Mailing, and Rick organize a nonprofit called Live, Laugh, Love, and Believe. And Rick is a huge supporter because of his wife, Vicki, who is a Walt Clark staff member. So thank you to Rick Mailing and Live, Laugh, Love, and Believe.
Thank you. So we have a motion and a second to approve the action consent items. Wendy, if you'd call the roll, please.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Visiter Ward.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Dave Levy.
Aye.
Mark Setter.
Aye.
Jeff Swanty.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Those pass unanimously. So now we will take up item, let's call it item 6.1 now. It'd be action item, where did it go? So approval of bond-related contracts. And Dave, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. I'd like Mr. Todd Piccone. Is it Piccone you pronounce it? Piccone. Let's have Mr. Piccone explain. If you could, a second. This is the first contract, dollar-wise, we're approving as part of our bond. I think we all share on the board that we want to, we are emphatic in performing our due diligence. Todd has produced a very good presentation showing how these numbers are consistent with our budget, and I just want the whole public to understand this. I only have questions, but I think it's valuable. So, Todd, would you please make your presentation?
Absolutely. So, Madam President, Board of Education, Dr. Schaefer, Todd Piccone, Chief Operations Officer. Yeah, so the action consent really outlines the process we went through. One, of how we bid the projects. Two, of what the projects cost. Three, of the what we're actually producing out of that work. And then four, a line item about where we're at on budget. So to kind of backtrack, we started with the scope and design. We were working with a consultant, Garland Industries, and we've been working with them, and the team, Kristen, who's here, has done a great job working the last several months. You know, initially when the bond scope was created, it was budget and it was based off of needs, off of leaking areas. But since the bond passing, we've gone through immense detail of inspecting all the roofing at these schools, and then having the professionals come in and analyze and really provide an extra layer of detail of what we can do, which then provided additional opportunity in different systems that's actually producing more square footage of roofing repair than we initially planned in the bond, which is super exciting. And the way we're doing that, there's two ways to look at how you repair a facility. You know, there's one is you demo it and then you start from scratch. You put a new membrane on, and that's kind of your new envelope. The other way, which we're looking at some of these projects, and you'll see where it says restoration, is we're actually using the material that's there, but we're putting a liquid application over the top of it, so we get to maintain all the material. Which one is more equitable? We can get more coverage done. And then two, it's still a life cycle cost that's going to expand the building life cycle cost. So what's exciting is we're capturing a little more, well, quite a bit more roofing square footage. You know, in those 10 schools there's about 255,000 square feet we were planning on doing. With this proposal and these contracts, we're actually looking at repairing about 414,000 square feet of roofing that's failing and in trouble. So, and then you'll see there, the last line talks about budget. So we're tracking roofing as an overall budget. So this first phase is over by, I'll say a little bit in the grand scheme of things. It is over in this section, But the reason for that is we actually have a plan in the next section when we take on the other 20-plus roofing projects of savings that's going to offset this, so we can maintain that overall budget of, right at that $12 million mark. So that's the plan of where we're at. As you saw in the contract documents, these are all completed this summer. Each contract is pretty general. And they're general because we work with the attorneys and created a contract that is really going to, one, protect the district, and two, is consistent in each project throughout each school. Yes.
I reviewed the contracts. I wouldn't call them general. I would call them flexible. Because they're specific in what they have to do, but it's flexible in your extent. You told me that the manufacturer is going to provide a 30-year material guarantee on these roofs?
Yeah, so it depends on the type. So there's a couple different systems, and it depends on the actual membrane we put down. But for example, on the replacement, that's a 30-year full warranty. That's actually comes with a 24-hour callback if something does happen. Depending on the type of restoration, how that restoration type goes down the existing system, it's a 20-year expansion of that product and that roofing. And then the warranty then will be specific to that site. Yeah.
The other point I'd like to make is that this new technique is less disruptive to the school itself during construction.
Correct. So on the restoration portion, if you go restore, you tear it off, and it can become quite extensive, and the risk for that is actually increased because you're into other infrastructure in the building. You're into the electrical, some of the HVAC, you've got dust. This actually maintains that structure, so then we just apply it on top, and it's less disruptive to the students. But we'll still be diligent to make sure it's still a chemical product, to make sure the material safety data sheets are looked at, and we do it at the proper time to still make sure we're doing it in a safe environment for the students and staff.
Well, congratulations. We're off to a very good start. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
That's it, Madam President.
Okay. Mark, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar with construction. I had a question about the material that you had described, the liquid application. Are there any examples of existing applications that we can look at to get an idea of how effective this is?
It is. We could take a field trip down to the Springs. I know the Air Force Base down there, they actually have used this product. And there's examples in DPS. Actually, I know the city and county of Denver have actually used this product. So there's other places around the state. And we can definitely get a list if we'd like to see those.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can see some airplanes and go to the Air Force Base.
Sounds like a really fun tour.
All right. We'll pick a good one.
And I just had one quick question, Todd. When we initially estimated these out, how long ago would that have been?
So that would have been 6 to 8 months ago.
Okay.
Actually, probably, now that I think about it, 8 to 10 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right. Then any more questions? All right.
I move to
That's what I was
approve.
just going to. Go ahead.
I move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
So it's been moved and approved. We have a motion and a second to approve the, how many of them are there? 6, 7?
Yeah, 10 overall projects,
count.
8 contracts attached.
Okay, 8 contracts. So we have a motion and a second to approve the 8 contracts attached and called out here on board docs. Bond-related contracts, roofing, and is there any further discussion? Hearing none, Wendy, if you would please call the roll.
Paul Banks.
Aye.
Pam Howard.
Aye.
Lori Visita Ward.
Aye.
Barbara Cruz.
Aye.
Dave Levy.
Aye.
Mark Setter.
Aye.
Jeff Swanty.
Aye.
Thank you, and that passes unanimously. All right, we're off to a good start. Be watching it. Those projects won't actually start till summer. Yeah, mostly during the summer, but keep your eyes open. Next item then, it would be numbered 6.2, and that is the Early Childhood Career Tech and Ferguson High School proposal. So you'll hear us talking about EC, which is Early Childhood, and CTE, which is the Career Tech proposal. Let's see, is that you, Todd? So we have, just a little background on this. The board was presented with, was first presented with this information at our study session in December. Is that right? Our board retreat in December, correct? And then we had a pretty lengthy conversation about it in our work session last month. No, this month.
A week ago.
A week
Yeah,
ago,
last
Thursday.
Thursday.
Yeah, time's flying. Okay. So,
And we also had the master plan committee present to us November 28th.
correct.
Too, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, so before you in the board packet is the recommendation for funding approval for the CTE and ECE Center as presented in the packet. So the first page there behind the recommendation is a map kind of showing the, in general, the moves throughout the district. Wendy's helping. Yeah.
Can you put that up, or Wendy? Okay, thank you.
You got it?
There it goes.
So what you see here is because there is several shifts recommended throughout the district, this is just really a map to show the different impacts in the different areas. The two highlighted in green are the ECE and CTE. So those are really the two, when we look at the cost options, those are the two schools that are closing, and the repurpose is one, Stansbury for early childhood education, and then Van Buren for career, or CTE, career technical ed, Ferguson, and then transition programs. And by transition programs, it's several programs right now that are spread throughout the district, which include HOPE, Community Connections, SWAP, and then some Thompson Online. So right now, one of the challenges, those programs now are spread in different buildings throughout. And to make that an actual transition program within the CTE, Ferguson, and then transition program. And then you see with the transition of ECE to Stansbury, it opens up other opportunities. Some of that being that ECE staff will then move over to Stansbury. So that now opens up this first floor. We have the facilities building on 1st and 287 that is aging, that now we have space here. We can move facilities over to here and then use that asset to help offset some of the cost of the proposed construction.
And when you say use that asset, you mean put it up for sale?
Put it up for sale, yeah. Also, you'll see there's a couple other projects associated with this. There's at the Transportation Center, when we make the move to facilities to this building, it actually opens up a carpenter shop and then storage area that will not be needed because that will be over here. And one of the challenges of the district too is warehouse storage. Right now, I'm sure there's other departments that can talk about how challenging it is, but you know, science to goes, we have in separate classrooms throughout the district between all the IT coming in, the furniture is surplus, and then nutrition services. There's really no place to store anything. So what happens is it gets actually left in the schools, and so this is going to help fix that challenge. And then the other item you'll see on here is a proposed freezer upgrade at the SSC. So right now we don't buy much food in bulk, which is actually costing the district each year. So the proposal is there to put some dollars towards a freezer upgrade. So if we go next to
Excuse me.
So this outlines the different cost by column. The first column being the EC Center. So that's the estimated cost of what it's going to take to renovate the building, repurpose it to an EC Center. You see down below are some funding options of how we can help offset some of those costs. There's already bond dollars allocated to that building so that those bond dollars allocated will not leave. It stays with the building. Then you'll see there's an option to sell a facilities building and put that asset, those dollars, towards EC at Stansbury. The next two columns are Van Buren, and that is one, moving Ferguson over, and then two, the other option is the green column there. I'm sorry, the green column is moving Ferguson over. The gray column then is renovating Van Buren to really a CTE center. And then you'll see again down below there's options then to offset some of those costs. And then the fourth column over is the estimated additional freezer space. And and it's estimated. We've used, I've used some previous experience and some conversation, but that's the estimated cost right now. And then you'll see the move facilities cost over here. There's some shop space that needs to be added, but then the proposal is to take, because the facility building is not there, to use those bond dollars that were allocated to that building to then help create a shop space over here. And then warehouse space, it's really a zero cost. It's just part of the transition of the other district moves. So you'll see as you total all those up, the proposed funding options, it leaves a total delta of what we have in assets compared to what the total construction cost is of about $10.8 million. So the proposal from there is taking the estimated bond premium and interest earnings and taking those dollars to complete those projects out of that, leaving a total remaining premium opportunity of about $24 million. So with that, questions?
Questions?
I just have a couple. So first, maybe we've talked about this before. So the ECE program at Stansbury, is that supplementing the programs we already have, and those programs will stay in place, or we're eliminating those and bringing them in, or is there a combination of that?
So the intention is that the programs that are currently existing will continue to currently exist. We wouldn't be discontinuing any of them, and by expanding it to the center, we would be then expanding our capacity to handle more early childhood program.
The only other one is, and I know we've talked a little bit about on the freezer space, and based on your experience that comes in at kind of what you think the cost will be. If, just for my sake appreciation, if there's any way to get that more formalized and look into what those condensers or whatever they call them cost, I just want to make sure we have enough allocated for that up front.
Yep, absolutely. Well, the next steps here will be actually to do some more detailed costs, just like we did in the roofing, and then outline where we land within that. That is a estimate based off previous experience and other costs I've seen. But if it were to come over, I'd come to the board for that presentation and say, here's where we ended up within the range of this $300,000.
We had talked about I believe it was a Head Start grant, and I was wondering if it's been a little while since we talked about it. Is there an update on the progress for that?
So we are in correspondence. There's some back and forth communication with federal agencies that they continue to request some information from us. I do check in with Lamb fairly regularly just to get updates on that. And then Lamb, correct me if I'm wrong, but we are expecting some type of notification in maybe February, March. More in March. So it's still. We're optimistic and hopeful, but again, we're awaiting, the final disposition.
Yeah, having that timeline, that time frame, that helps a lot.
Dave and then Jeff, or Jeff and then Dave. Okay.
Oh.
Whatever.
I just thought it might be good to have maybe Dr. Schaefer, somebody comment some more on the career and technical education, what that's going to mean to the community. I think this is something the community's been asking for. It's extremely important, and it'd be good just to go over that one more time.
So I'll introduce Theo Robeson, who's our Director of Secondary Schools.
Yes, indeed. So the beauty of having the Career Tech Educational Center is going to do several different things for us. So right now we have programs like ProStart that are a couple of our high schools. We'll be able to better make a pathway at the CTE program to have a level 3 for that program. Also, that provides more of an incentive for students after high school or to have a career pathway in relation to making more funds, whether they decide to go straight to the workforce or if they don't decide to go to the workforce, to have a career pathway through college. In addition to that, some of the things that we talked about in the meeting today, and I know I developed a presentation, so I don't know how much time I have to talk, but some of the other things is that it's going to better give us an opportunity to look at how we're going to support 45% of our students that we know transition from high school directly to the workforce. And also, again, going back to that career pathway for 55% of our students that go to 2 to 4 year college programs, how to help them get on the track that way as well. Another thing that when we look at that CTE program, and this is what I was saying earlier, that Mountain View and Thompson Valley, they currently have ProStart 1 and ProStart 2. But if we develop the CTE Center, we can have a ProStart 3 program, which gives access to this program to all students around the district as well. And then that also can have a ProStart and 1-2 program at the CTE Center as well. And that also has a pretty strong track to have great employment opportunities there with the livable wage for students. Another program that we wanted to see if we could develop this at the CTE program, and again, based on some of the information that we heard today, was the CNA programs, where you can have a start of about $31,000 per year. That can transition in a surgical tech field from $39,000 to $49,000 a year. Then that can also put you on that career college track to become a registered nurse at about $75,000 or $72,000 a year. So that'd be another benefit of having the program. And then another part that Fred Brown from Ames talked about today was that automotive track for kids as well, where you can see there the wages are between $35,000 to $46,000 depending on the level of certification that you have for that program. And also what Kyle Kingery talked about today was that manufacturing track for our students as well. Here you see starting salary is about $13 an hour. And then you can also, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but as you see the transition of the track here, you can also transition to another bachelor's career as it relates to industry and tech specialist positions as well. And then the overall part to this is that when you think about the CTE program, supporting students to become college and career ready, also one of the conversations that happened this morning was around those people soft skills. In the CTE Center, we can have that embedded inside the programs that we offer there. As well, it can be taught throughout a variety of different programs throughout our district too, through the CTE programs of high schools that we currently have. And then the biggest part to this is that, again, it just kind of helps us relook at how we can close the achievement gaps for students inside of our district. And it also reinforces that college career community ready piece to the work. And the big part about this overall is that I'm a former CTE administrator. And one of the things that I've seen in my past is that the ability to have programming where you can start the conversation to elementary school kiddos in order for that transition to happen at middle school to be more successful puts them on a stronger career track for high school so they understand more of the importance of their education. We know we have a high percentage of our kids that already get that automatically, but there's a certain population that it can reach more deeply as well. So these are some of the other benefits of having this programming overall.
I'll also add, we already do CTE very well in our district. Our high schools offer programming in career tech ed, and quite honestly, a lot of our students are hungry for it, and they go north to Front Range Community College and take courses there because we don't have them here. And so while Front Range is a wonderful partner, and certainly they were present today at the meeting as well, we have high interest from our student population and high involvement already in career tech ed, and our programs are full. And as we heard today from industry leaders and other representatives, there is an urgent need for a skilled workforce. There is an urgent need for entry-level, high-paying, high-skilled jobs. And there's, our population is aging, and we need to provide opportunities to replace that. Not all of our students are going to go to college. We will get them ready for college. We want them to be super successful. We want to offer best-in-class instruction and great opportunities. But quite honestly, we can do better in terms of creating additional pathways for our students to provide those opportunities, to provide them with, as Theo had mentioned, high-paying, high-skilled jobs. We can get them ready now in high school. We can get them excited about it in middle school, and quite honestly, even talk about it in elementary. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us, and something that I think is really important for the Thompson School District.
The business and industry, to add on to what you just said, the business and industry leaders that were here this morning were hungry for something like this. They were, in many cases saying if we had another 10 to 20 to 25 entry-level, semi-skilled employees to do this work, we could expand and then we could offer more and more pathways and just up the ladder. They were thrilled, I think, to be talking to us. They were ready to go. They were ready and willing to work with us. So I think we sit at like the perfect timing. Like this is a moment in time, I think, where we have the perfect opportunity to do this. So Dave.
do we?
I'm sorry, and then I'll get
no.
you. Go ahead, Dave.
Certainly, there are wonderful, wonderful advantages of both programs. However, we need to take a step back and review something else. The public never voted for this. People say the community's calling out for this. Well, then why didn't we put this on the ballot? We are having $28 or $30 million extra funds. The public has never voted on this item. There are some cautions I need to express. One, this bond is going to go over 20 years. In the next 20 years, we're going to have additional maintenance requirements on our buildings. We are not, with the MLO, planning to increase our maintenance budget. We have tiers 1, 2, and 3. We do not, or groups 1, 2, and 3. We are not addressing tiers 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We don't know if we are going to need this bond money to make those repairs. We're not even fixing every roof in our program. And in the next 20 years, roofs will wear out. Where are we getting the money from? So though I'm not opposed to this, I offer caution. I propose caution. I don't think we should accept this unless we have a comprehensive plan in front of us of what is all the maintenance required on all the buildings. And in addition, how do we know we don't need another school? What we are saying is that we didn't ask the public for this. We think this is our best choice. But we might have to go out to the public again for more money in 5 or so years. And their response may be, why'd you spend money on something I never voted for? So until we have a comprehensive plan of all of our financial requirements on infrastructure, which we do not have, and until we have a operating budget, how are we going to pay for this in operations, et cetera, I suggest caution. My vote is going to be no unless my suggestion is to delay it, but if it's not going to be delayed, I will vote no.
I have a few. So I guess just feeding off of that. So I know we don't have the comprehensive plan in place, but would anybody like to respond? I mean, has any thought been put into that? Are we truly jumping into this with no thought of 5, 6 in these needs?
No, so the other portion that we discussed last study session was, the remaining balance of that $24 million. And a lot of that was suggested to put towards maintenance needs and other district needs to help cover some of those additional maintenance costs. So although this would, take out of the $34 million-ish, there is still $24 million that could help those items and help those items of concern, for the next 5 years, so we don't get to a point where there's other high needs. So that was taken into consideration with the remaining $24 million of premium, which we've not brought forth for an actual, discussion on that plan, just ideas of how we would use that.
I don't remember the exact figure, but it seems like we had like $190 million worth of maintenance stuff to do. So if we're knocking most of that out with this, to Dave's point,
We're knocking half of it out, only half, less than
there's
half.
still quite a bit that we identified that we don't have a plan for.
Again, and I'm not opposed to this. I want to see the comprehensive plan to make sure we're not overcommitting to one thing without understanding the entire picture. That's the caution I offer. None of us here have seen the entire picture.
Jeff?
I appreciate Dave's concern, certainly genuine one, and I think we do have to take a closer look at this. At the same time, a couple thoughts that come to mind is for at least 15 years, going back, I know that the board has been talking about vocational programs and something like CTE. And though we didn't have it on the ballot, I think if we had gone beyond just trying to design a bare bones budget, which is what we did. I mean, 3 years ago, we went in with a Cadillac plan, and this time we went in with just bare bones. Here's the basics, and we didn't ask for a lot of things that we wanted, needed, and I think early childhood and a vocational school are two things that we direly need as a school district. They may not have been the top of our list, but they've been on our list for a long time, and I would like to see us go ahead with both these. At the same time, I want to listen to your wisdom there, Dave. That's exactly what it is, and make sure that we're prepared for the future, because there will be challenges in the future, and we do need to have some money set aside for when those times come. But I think we have a great opportunity at this time to take advantage of a couple of buildings that are being closed due to the sacrifices that we've made as a district, and we should take advantage of them.
So could someone speak to, one, the urgency of us needing to get this now so we can move forward with it, and perhaps a timeline or what it might take to bring us forward what Dave's requesting?
Yeah, so two things. We've put together timelines for both buildings of EC. You know, one of the challenges we also want to do is, part of this action is to help protect the district so we don't have buildings sitting there vacant. So two things. For ECE, we're looking at a phased opening. So starting this summer, actually moving the staff over and then getting 4 to 5 classrooms ready for the opening then of next school year. And then taking the next school year to renovate the rest of the building. So it's a phased opening. Working with Lamb, that's in his projections of how he can, also wants to open a ECE center. As far as CTE, the plan would be it is a major innovation and addition. So this is about a 1.5 year process. So this is something that's part of the sense of, we have a building, that there's an end coming, what are we going to do? And so we need to start design. And that design takes 8 months. The construction takes, anywhere from 10 months to a year. And that's to get it ready then for the 2020 school year. So, part of the challenge is we want to go forward with that section to then have an opportunity for the kids in 2020. And I will say, we do have some systems in place and working on them more. A capital forecast plan is really what we're talking about, is what does the district look like in 5 years? What does it look like in 10 years? What is our systems replacement? So an HVAC system, when is it due for replacement? Some of that stuff, is now that we're getting taken care of. Some of that's in the next 5 years, 10 years, and some of that's, in the next 20 years. So there are systems in place, and that's something that, I can bring back, and we can have a discussion on, deferred maintenance and what the chunk we're taking care of now, the chunk we're projecting out of the bond premium, and then really where that leaves us in the 5 to 10 years from now.
Hang on, I want to make sure that if somebody hasn't spoken, they've had a chance to speak. Mark, Barb, or Pam? Mark?
So first of all, I will say that I've done a lot of looking at this proposal. I've looked at the different options that are on the table. And after kind of running through, talking to a lot of people in the community, getting feedback, the Early Childhood Center and the CTE recommendations are fabulous. I think they're fantastic. This is an investment in our community's future. And when you start going through the numbers, the paybacks are enormous, potentially. We've got some people on board that are going to be able to knock it out of the park, and I'm very excited about that opportunity. One question that I have, this is a concern that I share with Dave. Over the past 10 years or so, we've been operating with about maintenance budget of about $750,000. And because the bond passed in November, our district is in a position very unique that we haven't been in for at least 10 years, probably more than that. Because when you look at the bonds that have been passed in the past, they were designed to build a particular school, right? Whereas we went out and acquired money to handle a bunch of backlog maintenance issues. So my question is, what does the bond impact have on that $750,000 a year budget item for the next 5 years?
Maybe that's a good question for Gordon.
And could you address the timeline of spending, the spending timeline, please?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer, Gordon Jones, Chief Financial Officer for the district. Mark, you're correct that the budget has been, the maintenance budget has been about $750,000 in the past. With the bond initiative and some of the projects that are planned in the, just as the board approved earlier, the first contracts from a roofing standpoint, some of that annual maintenance budget, the $750,000, goes to making patching repairs as they are needed. So that's an example of, by having a bond program that provides for those type of expenditures for a roof replacement or a major roof renovation, it eliminates that item from being necessarily a need for the maintenance budget, the annual operating maintenance budget. So it does free up dollars there. Also with you mentioned a $170 or $190 million previous figure that was talked about for priorities 1 through 9 from a maintenance backlog standpoint. Some of those repairs, I would imagine, and I haven't studied the list in detail, and not that I would put that additional work on my colleagues, but there could be items in there, and I would anticipate there being items in that list that would be eliminated from the maintenance backlog list with repairs or renovations that are done with the projects that are currently planned. So I think that's one avenue of where, yes, there is $750,000 that has been budgeted in the past for repairs and maintenance, that the typical repairs that we see could be replaced with other repairs because there's items that won't need to be repaired based on the bond work, the bond projects that are being undertaken with initiative as it is right now.
But can I follow up, Gordon? $750,000 over 10 years is $7.5 million. We have a backlog of $90 million in addition to what we're doing. So it's $7.5 million compared to 90. Yes, you would be addressing some of that stuff, but we'd leave 90% of it untouched.
Perhaps, unless some of those maintenance items were not necessary in the future by repairs that are being made now. We have no way of knowing what that number might be.
That's right. We don't know. And
hang on. Gordon, are you through?
I had a thought and it just
The
escaped me.
timeline, I had asked you to address the
Yes.
the spending timeline.
So from a statutory standpoint, with the bonds that were sold or issued last week, the interest earnings on those are tax exempt from a federal and a state perspective. So as part of that, the law, the federal law really that dictates how those proceeds should be used, there's a caveat that says 85% of bond proceeds must be spent or have a reasonable expectation to be spent within the first 3 years of from the date of issuance. So date of issuance will be the dated date, or the actual final date will be January 30th. So the district has 3 years from that point to have a reasonable expectation to spend 85% of those proceeds, not just the $149 million of par amount on the bonds, but then the premium that's associated with that, which is about $28.6 million, and any investment earnings from those proceeds being invested. So interest on those, which is estimated at this time to be another $6 million or so. So 85% of those funds, there has to be a plan in place, a reasonable expectation to spend 85% of those proceeds within the 3-year window.
85% of that is 154 million.
Correct, in that area,
So
yes.
we would, if we're going to spend 149 on the base program, we just need to spend a few dollars, 4 or 5 million more.
Yes, however, I believe the timeline that's been established, in fact, I'm confident of this, the $149 million is not phased over the first 3 years. These projects extend into year 4, year 5 as well
the
for expenditure.
Construction. I want to give the Barb and/or Pam a chance to speak if you have anything?
I would just go back to the conversation we had at one point about the needs of our community and the needs for addressing the graduation rate, as well as the need for the fact that we have a huge number of children out there that need some support for early childhood. And I think we can't keep delaying that. So that's, I really do support the plan.
Yeah, we've obviously been thinking about this, working on this for months now. And when I look at this proposal that we've been, going over, I think it strikes a really important balance, spending basically $10 million, which to me, what a lot of bang for our buck to get vocational ed, career technical education center, and an early childhood center for $10 million is, I just really appreciate the staff's efforts on this to make sure it's as tight as possible. And it still leaves us with the $24 million to address, like Dave said, the upcoming maintenance needs, which, we know are out there. But I think that $24 million is pretty crucial there. I think the bottom line here for me is our students are waiting. Our students are waiting for us to act. Our community is waiting for us to act. And I think we have a solid plan here. I think this plan is going to address graduation rates from beginning to end, from those 3-year-olds, those 4-year-olds that need to be ready for kindergarten, that need to come in and maybe we can help them learn their numbers and letters. And we need to address those graduation rates, especially for our young men in the community who are graduating at a lower rate. I think this is a window of opportunity that we need to grab because it's going to benefit each and every student in this district, and it's extremely important and it's extremely exciting because, it is our fiduciary responsibility to provide the best education we can to our students. And we need to get those graduation rates up, and we need to get these kids career ready. And this is it. I mean, this has been a long time coming. And I think as representatives, I think people, they do trust us. We have dived into these numbers. The staff has done their due diligence, and I think we're ready to roll. So I'm a yes. Thanks.
And Dave, one more comment, and then I'm going to call for a motion.
Sure. I offer a compromise. Let us begin the design work so there's no delay.
Review that.
Begin the design work. Authorize that so there's no delay. During that period, bring forward all the other maintenance that needs to be done. I'm not opposed to, I don't disagree with anything anybody said. I just don't want a surprise later on that we spent money and don't realize we've boxed ourselves into a corner. That could happen. So to avoid that, I offer this alternative. So I'm making a motion. Let us approve the design work. Let Todd come back in 2 weeks with an outline, a schedule of when he can submit everything to us. So there's no delay in the construction, the activities. And if we could limit the amount of money we're spending, get all the information before us, not handicapping any development, then we're not losing anything, and we're progressing, and I think, in a more prudent and responsible manner.
So could you restate your motion?
My motion is that we approve the design work, so there's no delay, that Todd comes back to us in 2 weeks with a schedule of what it will take him to show us all the maintenance we need for all the other activities that make the $190 million, what that includes, what maintenance budget we are to expect over the next 10, 20 years, an average of whatever it is. So we have all the information before us before we commit to spend another $10 million when we don't know if that's the right way to spend the money as compared to maintenance.
Okay, there's a motion there. Is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Could you restate your motion one more time, just
Sure.
more
And
succinctly?
let me state the intent. The intent is, I have this concern that we don't understand all the capital needs and the maintenance needs of the district. We don't have a piece of paper in front of us that outlines it all. So what the motion's intention is to get that studied before us, so before we make this final decision, and in the meantime, progress with the design in a manner that doesn't delay anything. It's a win-win in my mind. That's
So
the
let me see if
intention.
I can restate the motion. So the motion is to have Chief Operating Officer come back with a design as well as an outline of the remaining maintenance projects that need to be done that aren't being addressed.
Right, he progresses with the
first.
design, and that he gives us in 2 weeks, he gives us the plan of how long it will take for you to produce the overall needs of the district. Maybe you could do it in 2 weeks, maybe you need more time. I don't want to box you into 2 weeks. But you show us that, and then you come back with that plan before we commit to the remaining of the effort. And you need a couple of months of design, don't you?
6 to 8 months.
Okay, so Dave has spoken to his motion. Anybody else?
I just want to note, so was part of this something from the planning, was any about future schools or anything like that?
Sure.
Is that
That's
part
right.
of what you're requesting, or is that something separate?
Mark?
So I would ask Todd the question, given the motion that's on the floor, as we understand it, do you see the ability to comply with that request? Will it delay the project in any sort of way that would be of concern to you? And are we talking about expending additional resources that could be spent on other projects, fulfilling this request?
Yes, and yes. So, one thing to start on the design, that's not a small encumber in itself. That's a $1 million+ expenditure. So that by itself is a large commitment to start at this time without the unknown. And I will, offer this and, tell you our process to get to this point. That's why in the existing premiums, we looked at additional high maintenance needs. And a lot of the needs going in the future, we look at how is it going to impact the kids. A lot of the needs in the future in the 5 to 10 and really in the 10 to 15 year range, it's not an educational impact. So it might be paint on corners, it might be carpet, so that's part of what, we don't need to account for today, because that's the 15 to 20 year out. But we've looked at that in this other portion of the recommendation we looked at last week for the additional funding for those high needs, because there is building controls that we need to look at, and there's some HVAC things that we know need to happen now. And with the with the funding that Gordon mentioned of that $750,000, that also now is a chunk that can be used for preventative maintenance to prevent a lot of our issues that are happening, and put them towards continued repair. So that's another leap that we've not had before. With that backlog in a chunk taken out, we now have the opportunity with that $750,000 to actually put that towards high needs that we've not been able to. Right now it's kind of sprinkled out. There's so many high needs that we're capturing different items throughout the district. Well, now we can concentrate on those higher needs. We have that budget and that cap budget outside the general fund to focus on those other needs in the buildings, along with the other funding that was proposed last week of taking 6 to whatever that number is, maybe 10 million, to look at other high needs. If you add those up, that's $100 million in 5 years that we'd be putting into our buildings, which is going to get us to a better place. Is it going to get us to a place where I can say everything's fixed and everything's where we need to be? No, and it's in 10 years, 15, 20 years, we're not going to be there anyway. There's a funding mechanism within Colorado that also doesn't help that issue. But so I just offer that.
Jeff?
If I could put Dr. Schaefer on the spot, are we acting prudently to pass these at this time?
So I could say yes, definitively. I think that we have a very unique and amazing opportunity, especially with two assets, two buildings that need disposition. We have a funding stream that's available to us at no cost to the taxpayer. We've demonstrated an extraordinarily high need for both of these. And I think that our return on our investment will be exponential. So yes, I have no reservations about this.
And I haven't spoken yet, and I would like to push back a little bit on the notion that we haven't planned or we haven't assessed the need in the district. That's what we did for 2 years after the 2016 bond failed. That bond failed in 2016, and we spent the next 2 years after that assessing the need in the district. We know what the need is there. The staff has done that work. This is a move that we can make that will impact the education of the kids beyond, I mean, it's a physical plant expenditure, but it will, the bonus is that it will heavily impact education as well, the education of students. We want to move our graduation rates up. This is going to help that. We want to increase our reading scores at 3rd grade. Guess what? That starts in preschool, and this can help that. And I don't see any lack of planning on your part. I don't see any lack of detail on your part. I mean, yes, this is all going to get fleshed out more, just like every project does. But we don't have enough money left over here to look at building another school somewhere. That's really not on the plate. There's still another 24 million left from the bond premium and the interest earnings that we can use towards other high need maintenance needs that we haven't addressed. I just see this as an all-around win-win. Down here, Paul or Mark? Either one.
I guess kind of going back to Mark's question, and so is there anything about Dave's motion that prevents this from kind of getting the ball rolling and wouldn't put us behind and also wouldn't get us the information that we need? I'm not sure if in approving the motion that Dave, I don't see how it's derailing this in any way. It's just helping us get more information.
Yeah, and we can provide that information. We can. Yeah, I would like to take the next week and make sure that to understand that what that is. I was going to. There's still a large. Going through with the design. That's still a large approval in itself. So it's really heading down a path to me that's where we're going. If we all of a sudden encumber and we head down that direction. But yeah, so can myself and staff take a look at what we need and develop that outlook? Absolutely. And and that's what I was saying. That's really what has been developed in the last several months. Before my time here, and got to that $90 million of maintenance backlog. So, it's there. We know it's there. So we have that information.
Mark, did you have?
I would just say I've thought about this a lot, and I think I'm going to vote no on this motion because I want these projects to move forward. I believe it's time. We've done enough planning. You can get into a scenario where you overplan, or you plan too much, or you spend too much time planning. The other thing that concerns me when I'm listening to the deliberation that we're talking about here, from a business perspective, I look at how important it is to balance priorities between taking care of your maintenance issues and strategic investment in what I would call research and development. In this case, it's moving forward with a new program. If you don't get that unique balance of both priorities and balance them well, if you spend too much time on your maintenance, your competition will come in and crush you. If you spend too much time on R&D, you'll never have a platform that supports your product and service. So I think I like what I've seen. I agree with Lori. We've got the details that we need. We've been researching this issue for a long time. And I believe it's time to pull the trigger and to move forward.
Anybody else? All right, I'm going to call for a vote on this motion. Wendy, if you want to call the roll, please.
Paul Banks,
No.
Pam Howard,
No.
Lori Visitor Ward,
No.
Barbara Cruz,
No.
Dave Levy,
Yes.
Mark Setter,
No.
Jeff Swanty.
Okay, so that motion fails 6-1.
I'd like to move that we accept the staff proposal, action item 6.1, to move forward with the early childhood and the career technical education centers. And I guess Ferguson High School proposal, because that was part of it as well.
I second.
So there's a motion and second on the floor now to accept or move forward with the early childhood career tech and Ferguson High School proposal as presented. Is there any further discussion? Jeff?
I guess just a comment that I think it's important that the public understands, because it sounds like possibly we haven't been thinking about this the last couple of years, that we have $35 million that's burning a hole in our pocket, which isn't the case at all. This is premium dollars that could have easily just have been discounted at the time of the sale of bonds. We're fortunate that it turned out the way it did. We're fortunate that we had been thinking about this for years, that we had plans in place, so if something like this did happen, we knew the direction we wanted to go. I can't think of anything that would be at the further above in terms of needs in our priority list than the two projects that we're talking about here.
Paul?
So I'm going to vote yes on this because, like many of the comments, I think this is a great opportunity to provide some tremendous services for our students, and we need to get started on that. And I don't want to hold that up. However, I'm just going to come back and reemphasize it. Even though we got this bond and mill, and it's going to help us tremendously, it doesn't necessarily have got us out of the woods. We still have, our general fund that we have to deal with. Our reserves are still depleted, and we still have a lot of backlog. So we still have a lot of challenges ahead of us. So I want to move forward with this and do what we can for our kids, but we need to circle back around and start having these conversations and getting the information as quick as we can.
Anybody else? All right, thank you. Wendy, if you'd call the roll on this, please.
Paul Banks,
Aye.
Pam Howard,
Aye.
Lori Visitor Ward,
Aye.
Barbara Cruz,
Aye.
Dave Levy,
No.
Mark Setter,
Aye.
Jeff Swanty.
Aye.
Thank you, and that motion passes 6-1. Next up is discussion items. 7.1 is middle school math curriculum adoption timeline. Chastity, is that you then? Okay, thank you. Oh, and Theo, okay.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Schaefer, thanks for having us tonight. We wanted to give you an update. Since 2 weeks ago, we were able to look at the middle school math curriculum design plan and really refine it and revise it a little bit. And so we wanted to give you an update. We are very appreciative of an extra amount of time to look at this pilot and do it a little bit differently than we originally designed. So now we are looking at, we've expanded it. So it includes all middle schools and our K-8 High Plains. Every grade level teacher, so one from each building, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, will be represented in the pilot. The pilot will be expanded to a unit, so a longer period of study instead of a lesson. So we will pilot. We had teachers together today, and we had a really great conversation. They were able to work with one of the potential vendors around the product and what that looks like for students and them in their classroom so they can start planning. We also had in attendance some 5th grade teachers, some of our high school teachers, and our other specialists, so ESS, our special education teachers, our EL teachers, GT. We wanted to make sure that we had multiple perspectives and viewpoints so all students were represented in looking at these products. And so our principals were also there, our middle school principals all represented, and what they did is they developed a walkthrough document with our two things in mind of collaboration and engagement. And so we wanted to give real feedback that was qualitative and quantitative towards what this looks like in the classroom, the level of engagement, the level of rigor and collaboration that they're seeing students have from that outside perspective. We also worked with the teachers to design the first unit of lesson. So teachers worked in teams of like peers designing lessons together. All Teachers will give a pre-assessment to see where the students are as a baseline, and then a post-assessment on exiting. They're still going to continue to do some of the small instructional groups for interventions, just like they would, but they're using this other curriculum material. The thing that was important to us with this design is to make sure it wasn't a stop, drop, and just do something different. We wanted to make sure it fit within the learning progression of each grade and scope. So we do have two sixth grade groups working on something slightly different because they were a little bit out of sequence, but we have groups of teachers. No teacher is working in isolation. And so that is part of our expansion. The idea behind having fifth grade teachers and ninth grade teachers, we're really looking at our transition. We're really looking for teachers. We're opening up the scope so teachers can help design the professional development. And what does that look like from going from math expressions in the elementary to one of these new curriculums? What does that transition? What's the vocabulary look like? How do we start to incorporate that so the transition's a little easier? And on the high school side, they're going to be adopting hopefully next year. And so what does that look like through this process? And how does the curriculum or the materials, I should say, represent what's going to be happening at the high school, and what does that transition look like? And also, how does this process influence what we're doing in high school and that timeline so we can backwards plan and really design with that in mind? Did you want to add something else?
I don't know if you said, one additional thing that they were able to do with our middle school principals today was they developed a common walkthrough form. So during these 3-week trials of the two curriculums, they'll be real purposeful and intentional on what they're looking for as it relates to the two non-negotiable areas of collaboration and student engagement. So that's another critical component to the work today as well.
The other thing that we wanted to take time to mention is that we will have a community review space like we have with some of our other adoptions. So out there kind of in the work area, we'll have some tables set up starting next Wednesday. We will also provide an online form for just a couple questions of feedback. There will also be a paper form that they can fill out and turn in right there if they would like. So that's available as well. And so we will have the pilots for both units, for both vendors, done by spring break. And the reason for that is because state assessments start right after spring break, and we didn't want to interrupt that cycle. Our teachers and our principals have been so gracious and really responsive to this. They're excited about it. It is extra work on their part, but they came to the table and had really great conversations. So we're excited to see how this process goes to help us inform also what we're doing at the high school level.
Thank you. I want to commend you guys on hearing the what's the trepidation, maybe a little bit of concern about the quickness of this, and I want to commend you for hearing that and addressing it and working out a more robust plan, which I think for me anyway works. I do have one question though. Kids that are doing 8th grade algebra, will they? Does this push to that, or is that high school and not?
So because the way Algebra 1 is transcripted, it's transcripted as a high school course, we left that with the high school.
Okay.
So we just left 8th grade math. And so to add to that, we also have some of our 7th grade courses, and then we have 2.5, which is kind of the, right, the expedited course, right? So they are also piloting it, because what we want to do is see what curriculum, what gaps it has, what materials and gaps it has, to see which one accommodates the majority of our students and meets them where they're at.
I was just wondering if I'd get to ask my student how she liked it, but I won't, so, okay.
I know this, it helps me feel more comfortable about what's going on, but how do the teachers feel about it? Were they ready to stretch it out into their schedule as well? Are they comfortable with that, or were they?
So
I know that's like
no. Well, you know what? They were amazing today. I will say they were absolutely amazing. No complaints on their side. For this, something we came here 2 weeks ago and presented a plan based on the original timeline and the design, and we went through and we redesigned it. And so they had about a week with emails. Originally, it was 3 7th grade teachers, and now we expanded it. We have about 50 people there today. So it was quite a larger group. So some of them weren't part of it before and were invited, and they were super excited to have that opportunity to experience it. And some of the great things is we have some of our special ed teachers working with our general ed teachers on co-teaching, and what does this look like, and how does this look for our intervention. So those were some really rich conversations we had today, and you could feel the excitement. There's obviously a little bit of angst because it's new, but they were all they were all very excited about it and worked really hard.
Mark, did you have, or was it Paul? It was you, I think. And then Paul. Okay.
All right. Very excited about this. I love hearing what I'm hearing, and I love the collaboration, the participation by a number of stakeholders is fantastic. One question I had is with the new curriculum, can you expound more on the blended learning aspect of it?
So I'll try. Definitely chime in, Chastity. One of the things that we wanted to make sure of is that when we look at a dual platform, we wanted to make sure that it still had the same good instructional practices components to it, and it wasn't just like a drill and kill type of segment to it. So we do have a dual platform where kids can actually access the material. It can read the material to them for some students, and also has visuals of how you can do the problems as well. And so it had a variety of different things that we were looking for a dual platform component. You wanna add something?
So as far as the blended learning goes, it's not just an online platform where they just can do everything there instead of having direct instruction or group work. It's really designed with intentionality that teachers can use it in multiple ways. They can use it as an intervention. They can use it as a supplement. They can use it as just part of station rotation. And so the way it was designed, one of the things we did was make sure that teachers have all their students in there. Students can see their progress. They can be empowered to kind of own some of their own learning so they can see their progress and know what's next for them or be pushed for interventions, for extensions. And so it can be used in a variety of different ways. And that was part of the discussion today because our math teachers haven't always had that material provided for them. So that was part of the conversation today of how can they be innovative and getting that in their classroom, but not losing the collaboration part of it either.
Excellent. Okay, so I've got total 3 questions, then I'll be done. The second question was, what kind of discussion have you had about alignment to iReady and CMAS with this curriculum?
Yeah, so we've asked each one of the vendors to provide us a correlation to the state assessment or part of PARC because that's what a lot of our state assessment still continually is. So we have not received that from one of our vendors. The other vendor has provided that. One of the vendors also is used in 2 of our districts in the state, larger districts. One is a neighboring district, and we've seen correlations there from their student data to what they are receiving on CMAS scores as well. So the correlation of that one is higher. But we want to keep going back to the materials are one thing, but it's the professional development, the ongoing training, the expectations around it that we really want to make sure that we're holding those to a high standard and we're setting ourselves to a high standard to make sure that that's planned out well, to make sure they're supported because that will ultimately influence the scores and the instruction in the classroom.
Okay. And then
And
last
just to
question.
add one more thing to that.
No, go
The key
ahead.
with the instructional materials is that right now we have teachers in a situation where they're trying to design the instructional materials. So when you're doing that, you don't have enough time in order to prep yourself to prepare what good instruction looks like in the classroom at some of our locations. And so with having this curriculum, it'll be critical. And going back to another thing that Chastity said with the 2 different districts. So for the second curriculum that we're going to look at, it's called Big Ideas. And so we've seen Cherry Creek and Poudre implement those 2 programs. And we've seen in their data some phenomenal gains as relates to the ESS and ELD populations.
Good to hear.
Yes.
All right, last question. Thank you. What kind of discussions have you had about the transition? This is kind of similar to Lori's question, but transition from the curriculum that we use at the primary level and moving into the secondary level, and then similarly, when the students are stepping from the secondary middle school level up into the high school level, are some of these curricula better suited for that transition?
Well,
And just kind of what's our strategy to make sure that that integration is smooth?
Right, and I think that's part of why we're doing the pilot is because we really need to look at, they're made by a different company than Math Expressions, so the alignment's not going to be seamless. And so what we're doing is we're bringing in 5th grade teachers for the 5th to 6th grade transition to see what might be some gaps, what might we have to put into our professional development design to help with this transition and kind of look at it as a whole system. We have an opportunity now, since we're going to be going into high school and adopting hopefully next year, that we can look, we had high school teachers part of this process to help ask some of these critical questions, to look at these products to see what that transition might look like. Some of the products that we're looking at now extend to high school, so that is an opportunity as well for them to look at, go through the vetting process and the adoption process as we've done before.
All right, thank you.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay, you were scratching your head. Okay. Any other questions down here? Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to call it just a 5-minute break. We have looks like about another hour's worth of agenda on here. So, you guys mind taking 5?
No, I would have to.
Okay. 5 minutes, please. Oh, Mrs. Bird.
Guys doing here?
They were here for.
I know, but I had to have something on my back.
Stood on TV with the coat and the.
Well, I have mine either wrapped around me or I'm sitting on it and.
Skip here. Oh, boundaries. Skip is here for boundaries. Thanks, Paul.
Paul forgot what he's doing. He's like, oh yeah. It's not social hour right yet.
All right, thank you. Next up is item 7.2, which is boundaries for Stansbury and Van Buren Elementary School areas. Todd and Skip.
Yes, so, again, board and Dr. Schaefer. So I'm going to do Skip Armtowski, our planning manager, and he's going to review the document and then the plan for the boundary changes for both Stansbury and Van Buren.
Evening, Madam President, Dr. Schaefer, members of the board, Skip Armtowski, Planning Manager. In order to accommodate the students being displaced by the closures of Stansbury and Van Buren, we've come up with recommendations for the new boundaries. The one that's up now is for Van Buren. We'd be moving those students to Namaqua Elementary. I would point out once again that boundaries are based on resident students, not enrollment. So if you start thinking about how many kids are enrolled and what that means, that's not what we're looking at. So what I'm looking at with Van Buren and Namaqua is, for the last 2 years, the average total resident count between those two schools has been 522 students. Capacity at Namaqua at service level C is 540 students. Does this mean that next year we will have 522 or 540 students at Namaqua? Probably not. But we need to be able to accommodate all of those students if, say, gas goes to $10 a gallon next month, and all of those open enrollments going someplace else now say, well, wherever the bus is going, that's where we're going. So do I have any questions on the Van Buren and Namaqua move?
Questions, board?
I'll ask the question. Now, it could apply to either one of them, but so I know that there's board members that are already getting questions about, okay, if I was supposed to go to this school and now I'm going to be going to this school, I'm just wondering how should we respond, or how are we going to notify parents of this change is going on, and what information should we be giving them? I think if they're going to one of they were supposed to go to one of the schools that's closing, and now it's closing, they don't know where they're going, and so how are we communicating that to them?
That was communicated starting when last year at this time when we first started the whole closure process. And of course, we will do an official communication once this is approved.
Should we send those questions, like, would it come to you? If we got an email, should we just send, is it you the appropriate person
Certainly.
to send that to?
Certainly.
And 1 second, Dave. Once we will approve this next meeting, and once we approve it, then the search tool will reflect it correctly. You can go online and put
The
your
next
address
morning.
in there. Okay, Dave.
Last year, when we changed boundaries, I believe the board made a resolution. It wasn't going to change any school boundaries without notifying the parents in the school that's closing or whatever, and have to listen and, give them a chance to express their views of what the new boundary should be. That's what the board decided, if I remember right.
Well, I think that was talking about changing boundaries that affected some middle schools and Loveland High School. That wasn't in reference to these particular schools. If I remember right, we notified, no, it wasn't any of you, well, Skip, maybe you would remember, but when we did the process to close, we discussed this, and didn't we, I don't know that we approved it, whatever, but you put out information to the parents, this is the plan. It's my understanding that these families have already met with their counterparts. There's no principals here from those schools, is there, or any? Part of the discussion that the Van Buren people knew that they would be filtered into Namaqua, and they've already done some transitioning. So this is separate from those others.
Wouldn't it be a good idea just to make sure from both a public relations point of view, a courtesy point of view, that we did at the school hold a meeting allowing parents to express their views, and maybe we learn something, the district, that we would change, modify the boundary. Doesn't mean we're going to, but at least we should listen to what they have to say.
Jeff?
I wonder if we could pull our records from our meetings last year, because I seem to recall a conversation where we approved a complete guideline exactly how this was supposed to happen. There were steps
Like
and
workbook.
processes. The staff made us feel very comfortable as a board that this was all thought out, that this was going to happen very smoothly.
And I think you're right. I think that's the case, and I think this is the formality of formalizing those boundary changes, because in policy it's called out that we have to approve boundary changes. But maybe Wendy, can you, while we're discussing the rest of this, maybe you can find that meeting. I don't know when that would have been, but maybe you remember. Let's continue on with the other proposal, just the other details. While we're waiting on that. I'm sorry.
Related
Okay.
question. While you're at it, Wendy, I remember a presentation by Dr. Crespo where she had met with parents from certainly, I believe, both of those schools. And they sat down and collaborated over what they wanted to see happen. And so specifically, I remember Stansbury said, we'd like to take the entire student population and go to Monroe. And similarly, Van Buren said, we want to keep the population together and move them all to Namaqua.
Rather than splitting it up.
I'm just saying, did it happen? I have no opinion of what it should be. I just want to make sure we had a formal process allowing the students in the schools that are closing to express their view.
Hold on, Mike, and let's have Skip do the next school, and then I think Mike has something to add. So do Stansbury and Monroe. Thank you.
Once again, looking at resident students, one of the questions I get a lot is, why are we driving right past Mary Blair to take these kids to Monroe? When we're looking at resident students from 2017 October count, which was the analysis that we did at the time, the resident student populations of Mary Blair and Stansbury added up to 502. The capacity at Mary Blair is 480. The combined populations of Monroe and Stansbury added up to 419, and the capacity of Monroe is 505. So for us, it was pretty well much a no-brainer. Now, once again, will we see 419 kids at Monroe next year? Probably not.
And none of this precludes a Stansbury family from having applied for open enrollment in Mary Blair if they wanted to, because there's space in Mary Blair right now.
I'm looking at the open enrollment spreadsheet that's going to be finalized on Thursday. It's a very fair statement.
Yeah, some of those people do. So there is that. The boundaries are to make sure there's seats for the children.
Correct.
With open enrollment, they can choose to go where they want to go. Okay, now, Mike, you had some information to add, I think?
right, so I just wanted to clear something up for you real quick. I don't have any firsthand knowledge of the communication level that's been going on between Stansbury and Monroe, but I do know that a lot of this was discussed before. From the Van Buren side, I know for a fact that there's been some events that have been planned between those two communities. So, for example, I was just looking on November 18th. There was a message that went to families inviting, with Principal Dan Cox in Namaqua, inviting families to tour the school. And then there was another, I think it's called Donuts with Dan, that occurred in December as well. So there has been some communication between those communities back and forth.
And you're saying you don't know for sure if anything's happened with Stansbury and
I
Monroe,
don't have it in front of me,
Yeah.
but I know that that's
But Barb says it
Yeah,
has.
it has.
Yeah.
I've been invited
Yeah.
to a couple of those.
exactly. I don't have that in front of me right now, but I know that that's been going. Those two the community's been working together on that.
Thank you. Wendy, were you able to find when we,
No, all I can show that in the May 16th, 2018 meeting that was the initiation point to then go start those with a board approval. So I showed that was approved at that point to then go move forward with the school closures. And then that timeline of events that were going to happen. But I haven't found it yet of exactly what that all said.
If I can clarify, on that timeline of events, one of the very first things that comes on that timeline is the assignment of students to a new school. So from the very first meeting that we had with the school communities, we laid it out that this was our plan. And when we presented to you with the master plan committee, we did the same thing. We laid it out that this was the plan.
so maybe what if we do this? We have, we're not expected to act on this tonight. It's a discussion item. What if we do this? If we get, Dr. Schaefer, if we have the principals, if perhaps you talk to the principals, if we get some information from them, like what they've done or where they've been on this timeline, and then you include that just in a written correspondence to us, and that might allay, that might then tell us that, yeah, the families have been involved, they're aware, they know. Would something like that work?
Yeah, my idea is just that I thought the board said as policy, we're going to allow the parents to offer their suggestions and comments, not, and that would be done before you made the presentation to the board to incorporate their inputs. And obviously we let them know. I just don't know if they let us know their thoughts. That's just what I want to see.
Well, we can ask the principals those questions, and we can get
That's
feedback on
of
that.
course fine.
All right. Anything else, Skip? Or
Could
Todd? Yeah, question?
Well,
Or
got a little
comment?
bit of discussion here.
Okay.
When we were in the Berthoud High School, when we had our meeting, we had discussed potentially changing our policy on choicing in. Right now, it was first come, first serve, and there was discussion including let us give a week, a month window for people to submit, and if it's more than there are seats, it'll be done by lottery or something like that. So it's not a rock concert, you have to rush to make the first. Where are we in changing that policy?
So we are in the process of auditing and reviewing. I think this year was an intermediate step to where I would like to see us move, and that would be a lottery system, so that it's not kind of a ticket rush to see, and so I have directed staff to look at that. We want to have our new revised open enrollment, policies in place for next school year. There will be certainly engagement and updates to the school board. We'll certainly make sure that we engage our building level leadership as well, and also seek some input from the community too. But yes, we are committed to taking a robust look at our open enrollment policies.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, thank you, Jen. Oh, wait, there is something else. Mark.
One other question has to do with busing, transportation. So when we look at the two maps, we've got the area, I think you already know my question, but basically, will all of the students in the current Stansbury service area be bused to Monroe? And will all the Van Buren students all be bused to Namaqua?
At this point, yes. Barring some unforeseen thing, that was something that we told them all from the beginning. And it's basically, it has to do with safety. As you know, if you're going up North Monroe and you pass the Church of Good Shepherd and then you pass the open area and you run across that little bridge, there is no mechanism for pedestrians crossing that bridge. So there's no way that we're going to have elementary kids walking down there. It wouldn't make any difference if we were sending them to Mary Blair or Monroe. And then same thing for Van Buren going to Namaqua. There are not contiguous sidewalks the whole way. It's not safe.
It's beyond the distance anyway, isn't it?
Most of it is.
Most of it.
That was
Well,
my
yeah,
concern.
except maybe that one little corner, yeah.
Todd, could you add that bridge to your capital program? Pedestrian bridge?
Yeah, it's on the
Okay,
5 to
thank you.
10-year plan.
Thank you.
All right. Mike?
So one of the advantages of the board meetings being on TV is the principals watch and they
They're
can send me
calling in?
messages. Yes.
Thank you.
So
There we go. You were on the ball.
Angie Garrity wrote me and she said that yes, her families had met with Dr. Crespo last year, and it was communicated to families on the changes in which schools they would go to after the closure, and that Monroe has also done the same with Stansbury families. So it has been a mirrored process on both sides.
Thank you. I don't have any homework. You don't have any homework? Unless you hear from one of them in the meantime that contradicts that, but thank you, and tell Angie thank you. Or if you're still watching out there, Angie, thank you. All right, that was great. Item number 7, so this will come back for a vote next time.
Skip, thank you.
Item number 7.3, which is it's our last discussion item for tonight. 2019-2020 course fees, and I believe, Gordon Jones, you have some information for us on revenue from course fees.
Thank you, Madam President. Just as a recap from the discussion that took place at the last board meeting, Don Huckabee, Chief Academic Officer, prepared a proposed policy revision for school fees. Each year, that's part of the process for the board to adopt student fees or school fees for the coming year. There were a couple of recommendations, slight changes to the, not to the policy, but to the fee schedule. There were a couple new classes that had been offered that are proposed to be offered next year that would require school fees or have school fees requested, as well as a request from athletics, from the athletic directors in the district to remove the family maximum for athletic fees. So if a family had more than one athlete or more than one student, or that student participated in more than two sports, that it would remove the family maximum for that family for the athletic fees. And the board requested at that time to receive some further information on the fees that were collected. The last audited statements we have is for the 17-18 school year or fiscal year. So I have a brief presentation with a little bit of that information here, and then would be glad to try to answer any questions, especially from a financial nature that the board might have regarding school fees. So the analysis of the student fees revenue revealed this slide, the information that's shown on this slide. There are basically 3 types of fees. There are instructional fees, course fees, and athletic fees. And the notes that are associated with those, you can see for the board's benefit what types of fees are in each one of those categories. Shown for the board's consideration are the results from the 16-17 fiscal year audited results, the audited results from the 17-18 school year, and the difference between those 2 years. So as you'll see in that middle column, for the last completed year, there were nearly $760,000 of fees that were collected, spread across those 3 primary categories. Questions as we go, Madam President?
You said earlier that the latest results we have is what you have up there. I can't recall. Last year, did we increase fees? So, for instance, it went up 7% approximately from 16 to 17. Did they go up last year too? Approximately?
I'm speaking from memory, but I I don't believe there were any significant increases to the fees from 16-17 to 17-18, you're saying, or 17-18 to
From last year to
18?
this year. Are the fees we're paying right now more than they were a year ago?
I'm hesitant to say with all certainty that that's not the case, but I don't believe there were any proposed increases. There could have been new fees that were added,
For additional courses.
additional courses, but I'm not recalling any increase in the fees that took place from last year to this year. But again, that's from memory.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any idea why the decrease in course fees from, the other two increased? Why do you suppose the other one went down?
So course fees, this would be without further analysis. This is just my impression. But you can see in Note B, the course fees are for the applied arts or career and technical ed, career and technical education, CTE courses. It could have been lower enrollment. It would be my immediate hypothesis, but that would require further validation.
Dave.
Question, Gordon. The athletic fees, are they restricted to team sports? I mean, when you have physical education, are there any fees for that? Or this is just the sports afterwards, after school?
I believe in the memo, if you will bear with me just a moment. For physical education there, I do not believe there are any fees associated with that because that is part of the, and I'm out of my depth here speaking from a curriculum standpoint, but graduation standards or those types of things, that's a typical program that's provided. It's not an enhancement of a program. Under physical education on the fee structure in policy JQ-E that's in place right now. Under physical education, there's athletic training, which is I'll say a more specialized course, and first aid are the only two items that I see on the list from that policy for classes that involve a fee from a physical education standpoint.
So the general phys ed course does not have a fee. It's the specific, like first aid or athletic training or JROTC. Looks like lifeguarding.
Lifeguarding.
Yeah, so there's a couple PE courses, but not the general one that kids would be required to take. These would be electives.
Correct.
Okay.
Something else that the board had requested was a comparison of fees with how Thompson School District compares to other districts. It's a bit, in the research that I conducted, it's a bit difficult to find those fees from the other school sites. A lot of them have them behind a paywall, so as parents or families are able to go in and pay their school fees online, that requires a registration for that service. So Poudre School District did have a good comparison. It's very similar to what Thompson has posted on the website. So this is not intended to be an all-inclusive list by any stretch, but it's intended to be a sampling of comparable fees between the two districts, Thompson and Poudre. And you can see that from an athletic standpoint, the fee per sport for Thompson athletes is $125 per sport with a family maximum of $325 compared to $150 for a Poudre School District athlete with no family maximum associated with that. You can go down the list there as well for athletics at the middle school level, similar to what we see for high school, and then just a sampling of some of the advanced or non-elective courses that are out there, the fees that are charged. So this was very consistent. This pattern was very consistent with a variety of the fees as I looked at the analysis.
Madam President. Gordon, can you go back to the first screen again? So the one, so Gordon and I talked about this as well. The one thing, so what this depicts is what is the revenue that's collected. What it doesn't depict is the revenue that is not collected. So as we look at free and reduced lunch students, as well as uncollected, not, some students don't pay fees for what have you, and we're not a collection agency, and so there's some unaccounted amounts as well. So I asked Gordon to, again, this is just a guesstimate, but what would you anticipate as uncollected fees because of either free and reduced or economics or other reasons?
Sure. So looking at the statistics that are reported to CDE for the 17-18 year, K through 12, the free and reduced lunch rate for Thompson School District is 37.2% of the student population. When you include pre-K into that number, it goes to 38.03% of the population that's on free and reduced. That means that the families have completed the application process, the federal form that CDE administers then as part of the free and reduced lunch program or meal program for the school district. So using K through 12 figure at 37.2% yields a total there of about 1.2 million that would be collected, and the district collected about 760,000. So there is a difference there, obviously, of about 750,000 that was actually collected, as you see here, or nearly 760, with 1.2 million being if there were no fee waiver for free and reduced lunch population, we could estimate that there would be 1.2 million in revenue collected.
$440,000 not collected.
I say not collected, meaning that's a district policy to waive those fees.
Just want to express some thoughts here. I could understand athletic fees being extra. You go to school, we're trying to educate you, part of education is physical education, etc. If you want to join a sports team after hours that we host, I could understand why we charge athletic fees. I have difficulty supporting instructional fees and course fees. If art is important to a student's development, then we should provide it, and it should be, if it's important, it's just as reading, we provide the books in reading, we provide the workbooks in reading, we should provide the art supplies. We're not rich district, but it just seems if the state constitution says we provide education gratuitously, if we feel that's part of education, it should be provided. We should provide it. It seems to me that's a reasonable point of view.
I think that's you bring up a really good point, and I think it's an interesting conversation that I'd like to see us continue. Looking at it from another perspective, I talked to some friends of mine who were shocked. They were from another state that begins with the letter C, and they were shocked to hear that we are where we are from a statewide budget perspective, but we still have athletics, and we still have art, and we still have music. And they asked me, how is that possible? And my response is, it's important to us. We're not willing to cut that. We're not willing to cut those programs. From a teacher's perspective, I'm also very concerned about the lack of funding. I totally agree. If someone is excited about art, we should be able to fund that. But from the teacher's perspective, my budget's this big. And so when I want to do a project, the money's just not there. And so if we cut these fees, I'd like us to have a plan in place so that we can have at least as large a budget as what we currently have.
Good points, both of you. I don't disagree at all. And I think it's important, and I hope the school athletic departments hear this. I don't think anybody on this board wants to see any of their programs cut or see them not get the money they need. To me, the question is, where is that money coming from? Is it coming from the parents, or is it coming from the school district? And where are our priorities? How important is this to us? So for instance, with myself, I think athletics are part of the learning experience. I think people that play football or wrestle or swim or whatever their sport turns out to be, they learn a lot of lessons in life. They learn how to grow up and be a team player. We work as a team up here on this board. And probably if you think back on your own education, probably at some point playing a sport, maybe marching in the band, Mark. I mean, it's a team effort. And I think a lot of things are learned by sports. And to me, it's important that we find a way to fund whatever the athletes need and AP and everybody else. It's a question of where the money is going to come from. And
It's an ongoing cost.
it's an ongoing cost. And if, Madam President, if you'd allow me to, I'd like to read a short letter that I received a couple letters on this topic. I think it's something near and dear to a lot of parents' hearts. This person is Tom Pitts, who happens to be on our master plan committee, but more than that, he's a concerned citizen. And he wrote, I saw the report on the school board meeting in the Reporter Herald regarding the discussion of student fees. I have always thought that charging fees for school activities excludes students of families who cannot afford these fees from participating in those activities. While I understand that low-income students are exempted, there is no way to measure the number of students of middle-income families that simply cannot afford the fees and are excluded from activities. I serve on the Master Planning Committee and have some understanding of difficulties of district financing. However, if activity fees could be eliminated entirely, I would support that. It seems to me that if those activities are important to students and to the district, the need for funding those activities should be considered along with the priority of funding other activities. And I want to follow it up just with a short story on a lady I've known for many years, and I know her son, and he plays sports, and she was telling me recently that her son, when I asked her, was no longer playing sports. And I said, well, why isn't he? I mean, it's always been near and dear to your family's heart to have him participating in sports. And she said, she asked him the same question. He said, Mom, I know what a stress this would put on you and Dad and the family's budget. They don't qualify for free and reduced, but it was going to put a lot of stress on that family's budget. And I think there's a lot of people out there. I think there's a lot of people who have pride and probably would qualify for some of these programs, but they're not going to ask for it. And all these programs are important. I just think we as a board need to really take a close look at what's important to us in terms of education. Athletics, band, advanced placement, all the many programs we have, they're all good programs. But how do we create a level playing field for all students where I know the school works very hard at not being discriminatory, but nonetheless, students end up being discriminated against. Not because anybody intentionally did it, just because of how the system works.
I just had a real foundational question. I should probably know this, but so how is it decided which courses will have a fee and which courses won't? What's the criteria for that? Do we know?
I can offer my opinion, but I don't know that there's.
So we have a fee approval process. I know that it's teacher driven based on what supplies, extra supplies above and beyond what they can offer. And then that generates a request for fee. And again, there's a fee proposal process that then comes before the Board of Education. So some courses, you know, for example, the arts or CTE or other, have materials that are associated with it. And, the building budgets are set. And occasionally, or at times, building budgets don't cover maybe all of the needed supplies or materials that a teacher may need for the course, and so that's when the fee is requested or generated.
There's no criteria about core classes, elective classes, or any of that, or is that part of the decision making?
Policy addresses the policy JQ. Or JQE?
JQE, I think, is the actual list.
Yeah, but JQ addresses, let's see. It's about materials. Somewhere I read something that they won't be charged, no fees will be charged for core academic, what do they call? It's somewhere in JQ that talks about what we do and what we don't.
And that's kind of where I'm going with my thoughts, is because I understand the points that they're being made, and if we had a big pot of money, then I would totally agree with it, but I don't think we can get to that point. But I still have in my mind a middle ground somewhere that says, if nothing else, the core classes, which in me includes like AP. Like if a kid wants to take an AP course to meet one of his core one of his core credits to graduate, I just don't want kids not taking those academic core courses. You know, especially Jeff, you reported today, but you know, AP is one of the things that they remember the most. And I just, again, I know I had a family share with me that their kids are not taking AP because they can't, for whatever reason, they can't pay those fees. So even if we can't go all the way, I mean, is there a starting point of saying, you know, are there core classes at least that we're ensuring that they're not, so if there's something in the policy already that addresses that, that would help. But
So I'm hearing
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm just hearing a ton of great questions. I think all of us are just struggling with this a little bit. And so I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to kind of move us on. So I'd like to move that we freeze all the athletic fees for the next school year, 2019-2020. Is that right? And secondly, I'd like us to form a subcommittee or to study that. So a couple of board members, obviously, admin, principals, whoever we feel needs to be part of that subcommittee. So we can really do a deep dive, bring recommendations back to the full board. This just seems to be, I don't think we're anywhere near ready to make a final decision tonight. Also, I would like to move that we do go ahead and approve the academic fees for the new classes. There were just a few in there, and I don't want to, it seems like those new courses have been approved, so I would like to go ahead and just approve those new academic fees. So I guess three parts.
this is all just discussion night, isn't it? There's no action?
Oh, well, okay.
No, there's no action on the course fees, but we can not bring it to action.
Not bring it.
By assigning it to a committee.
To subcommittee.
A subcommittee.
I just feel like we're just really, all of us have so many questions and things to dig into.
Are you thinking through a year or through yet this year or taking
Well, I
it
think-
into next year? What do you
I think that's a good question for admin. Like, what is their deadline? Like, here we are, it's January. So I would assume by, next December, we're going to need to have this hashed out, right?
that's what I
To give them time to implement this. That would be the latest, I would assume. But once again, that'd be a good question for staff.
I would certainly support that. I think it's a great idea. I don't think we're going to be able to, as much as I'd love to, just waive all the fees. Free education will never be free. I understand that, but I think if we could freeze things where they're at right now and form a committee like you're talking about, it's a wonderful idea. And I think I'd also like to reemphasize the message to our athletic department. We want them to get the money they need.
Right.
We need to find a way as a board to make sure that athletics and all of our teachers have the money they need in the classroom. But I think it's a great idea, and I would second that motion if we can move that forward.
Okay, so can you, we've got a motion and a second. Can you restate the motion for me, Pam?
I move we freeze athletic fees for the 2019-20 school year. And I also move we form a subcommittee to study in depth along with the appropriate staff. And then I'd also like to go ahead and approve, and I know we might not be ready to approve the academic fees for 2019, 2020. I don't know if I should just
You
kind
wanna
of
bring those back?
Bring
Is
that
that what you're
back for the agenda for next meeting or whenever we're supposed to, actually vote on it. So I'll just make those two.
A point of order? Isn't that motion, shouldn't that occur next week? This is just discussion.
Yes, and we could, well, we
We can't vote on that.
We
can't
we
call
could
it
not-
freezing the fees this time. That's my
We can
thought.
vote on not bringing it forward any further. I mean, we
Yeah.
could not
We can
bring it.
vote on being done.
We can be done with it.
Which means it freezes.
Right, we can be done with it for now and assign it to a subcommittee. I think,
I'm okay with that. It's
So
just-
someone can explain to me, so like a point of privilege, would this be like a point of privilege? Is that what it'd fall under? That it's like a special motion that falls outside of, I don't know.
The board's not taking action.
I suppose we're not taking a form, we're taking a postponing basically and and study.
Right, I would recommend, we certainly can bring back next, for our next meeting on the consent agenda. So we would not include athletic fees. So I think we had a proposal to eliminate the cap. We would just freeze athletic fees where they were as of the 2017-18 school year, 18-19 school year, excuse me. But we would forward the 3 proposed fees for those new courses that you approved. And that's all you would see on your consent for next.
So we're basically asking for the action item next time to only include the new classes, to add to undo the cap. I mean, to put back the cap. So maybe that.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And
Well, you haven't, I mean, formally haven't undone it anyway, so by freezing, it's
Correct.
just, it's keeping things in
Keeping
place,
things
right? It's a
status
status quo. So yeah, I don't think we need to.
have it
walk
to
in- right.
a vote or an action.
But in the meantime, staff will, we will look at exploring a subcommittee and what that looks like. We want to make sure that we have appropriate representation, certainly from community, maybe a board member or 2, and then staff. Because this is a complex issue. We really want to do some deep study into it and then provide a good proposal for the board to consider.
And just as a point of history, Pam, I don't know if you remember, but years ago, what year is this now, 2019? 10 or 12 years ago, the district had a budget proposal team that was made up of community members. Pam and I both served on that a long time ago. And that was at the beginning of the downturn.
The recession.
And what cuts is the district looking at making, and what kind of cuts can we do? And one of the things that came up at that time was doing away with these fees. And they didn't do that, which is interesting.
Right.
That at the time, they looked at, I guess, it wasn't our decision to make at that time. We were community members just kind of
But it is a big community
providing
group
input, but
on
it
the
was
team.
very interesting, yeah.
So ultimately, it's really going to be then a look at the policy that you see up there, because it really would have to be then a policy. You'd have to walk back that policy, or at least reframe it in a way that would create that fee waiver. The other piece we would have to look at then again is the budgetary concerns. So continue to look at and examine. Because the fees have to come from somewhere, and so we would have to explore what those funding sources would be without any obviously impacts.
And are there any fees that aren't called out in this schedule that students pay? I know, for instance, there's marching band fees that aren't included in here. There's probably other club type fees, like kids that do
Yeah,
robotics
FFA,
competitions, FFA
yeah.
membership, those kinds of things.
There's a ton.
I mean, if we're investigating, I'm not suggesting that we do anything about them, but I think we should know what they are.
Again, it's sorry, Jeff. So my daughter, 6th grade, she recently took a field trip, and I paid $10. That was for lunch, but a fee. So it was. It's a broad conversation. It transcends, I think, courses. Field trips are obviously an extension of learning, and so what does that look like too?
Dave, and then Gordon has something to add.
Just 2 thoughts I want to express. What's our funding per pupil? $7,800?
For the 18-19 school year, yes, approximately 7,800.
And I just wonder how much art supplies would be per student, $50? So it's a question I have to understand why would we collect $50 out of $7,800? There just seems to be a disconnect there. And the second thing is, and this is not mentioned before with the board, but a couple of community members came to me and said, what this district misses is intramural sports. Sure, there's a lot of kids want to play baseball and basketball if they can't make the varsity or JV team. They're just not athletes. but it's just as important to them to play on a sport. It's just as beneficial to them. So here we are, we want to have, we love Loveland, right? Class 5 champions, But what about the kids that can play flag football? Are we ignoring them because it's varsity or nothing? So I think, Pam, I like your idea of the committee, and I would just suggest we add that to it.
That's a cost. You do realize that's adding a cost.
Absolutely.
Okay. I just
No,
wanted
but
to make sure
no,
that we were
But just
on the same
but for
page.
this, but for the student, are we saying we'll give money to the student who's talented, but we're not going to give money to the kid who can't make varsity? Philosophically, is that correct?
Or the kid who doesn't do art, doesn't do sports, doesn't do music,
Well, we try to find something for
Right,
everybody, right? But I mean,
Chess isn't too expensive, Spelling isn't too expensive.
I don't know, when you talk about it, and when you start talking about referees, and
That's
when
right.
you think about all the expenses that go into all that stuff, it seems,
Well, that works both ways, too. When we have a very bright student that's going to qualify for AP, they're going to have to pay more to get the education that they want and desire.
Yep. All right. And you had something to add, Gordon, or to wrap up? Or
Just very briefly, it certainly is an interesting topic for debate. I think all districts out there wrestle with this. I would just say if a committee is formed or a subcommittee by the board, that certainly one of their considerations has to be what CDE's requirements are. I'm not completely versed on what those are, but I know there are some requirements they have for participation in certainly at the varsity level, at the high school varsity and JV level, if there's what fees can and can't be charged. So there's a CDE consideration certainly as part of that conversation as well.
All right. You have your instructions on this one? Okay. Well, we took the other homework, away.
You took some
And
homework
we're into this
away.
one.
It's
All
like
right,
you
so
come to
we won't be seeing that the upshot of all this is we won't be seeing that item. Oh, yes, we will be seeing it come back, just the three new courses. Yep.
Exactly. If I may, Madam President, it is an adoption of the fees for the course catalog.
We have to do it every year anyway.
That's it's an annual
Yep.
event, and then with this consideration of the committee.
Madam President, I will
Yes, sir.
volunteer for that committee if you need
I
someone.
had a feeling you might.
I'd be happy to join
There
Jeff
you go.
on
You
that
got
committee.
your two there, Dr. Schaefer. All right, thank you. That is the end of the printed agenda. There are two written reports, Families Partnering in Education, which is Family Pie, Early Childhood Education Council, and the monthly financial report for December. Barb, do you want to add anything on Family Pie? Is there anything you want to point out there?
I looked through it and it's pretty
It's all good? And Gordon, the monthly financial report is self-explanatory as usual, right? That's attached? Okay. And future agenda items at this point?
Oh, well, Jeff, I think did, but then I wanted to comment.
You can go first.
I just want to make a comment. It's not a future agenda, but just comment. I just want to thank this board for the conversation we're having. I know sometimes it gets late, and it sometimes be easy just to say, let's expedite this to get through this. But I just want you to know, I appreciate the conversations, and I think it's helping us get to better places. And we don't intend to cause a bunch of extra work for you guys, but I just think it's time well spent. So I appreciate you putting the time and effort into doing that. So thanks.
Thank you. Jeff?
Thanks, Paul, for saying that, because those are some of my exact thoughts. And I think it's good that we don't always agree with each other. It doesn't look like we're up here rubber stamping what's brought to us. And having said that, I very much liked what Dave talked about earlier about having more of a comprehensive plan and what we're going to do with the premium dollars that we got from this bond. And I would like to suggest, or I don't want to break Robert's rules of order, but go ahead and make a recommendation that we have something brought forward that's more of a comprehensive, totally cohesive plan on what we're planning on doing with these other dollars so that we don't have this issue in the future.
Right, so we talked about a couple of, you weren't at the last.
I had to
Yeah,
miss
you weren't
that.
here. But we did talk about there were 6 or 7 items on there, not necessarily that we moved on or anything, but just some ideas that staff had that they proposed. But you can, I would imagine, move forward with, like, fleshing those out, maybe adding some others after what you heard tonight. And we can put an agenda item, because I'm assuming that's the next step, right? We spent the first 11 million or 10 million or whatever it was, and there's the rest.
So we would offer it as either a study session item to go much deeper in conversation, certainly a discussion item. We would certainly provide recommendations with thought and analysis, and then allow opportunity to discuss and vet some of these. So there's work that needs to be done, certainly, in going through priority lists that the board has established, as well as looking for some opportunities. So.
I think for me, I don't know, you guys can chime in, but I think for me, I'd like to see it as part of, I don't know, maybe the next study session. What month are we in? January, maybe February studies as part of that. I know, Dave, that you want to have what we want to talk about, but this format does not lend itself very well to having those kind of back and forth with staff, the what if, let's,
Brainstorm.
So brainstorming. I mean, there's still public meetings. People are still welcome to come. We're still talking about the public business, but it's a much better format for us to sit down and all talk about
actually
that.
see everybody at these
right.
meetings.
So I'm wondering if I'm wondering if February we could have a start on that, and
No objection to that, but we did mention the last study session, we have a special meeting.
yes.
On board. So I
Yep,
just
and
want to know-
and I didn't. I'm going to put out some suggested times, and Wendy's going to do that's still on my brain to do that. Wendy's going to put out like a doodle poll to come up with a date that you're going to do 4 hours. I'll give you like a morning choice, an afternoon choice, an evening choice, a Saturday choice. I know Dr. Schaefer's going to pick Saturday, so we'll go from there, and then I think that the way I came to it is when we have if we have 6 people that can make one of those times, if we have 7 that can make one, great, perfect. But my cutoff is kind of like if we can get to 6, then we'll go for that.
And then just one more. I got a quick commercial. So tomorrow, Facebook Live event. That's at 5 p.m. We'll be talking about social emotional learning. 3 of our principals will be joining me. So,
Who are
so
they?
again, that's Facebook Live. Oh, you're putting me on the spot.
Michelle Malvey.
Todd Ball, Nicole Schlegel, and Brandy from Turner
Reeves,
Middle.
okay.
So it should be a great conversation, and again, real-time questions from our community.
Nice. And with those Facebook Live events, if you can't chime in when it's live, the filmed version is put up on the website. You can watch it later at your
Video. Thank you.
at your pleasure. Those are kind of exciting.
Those are neat.
All right.
Idea.
If there's nothing else, I'll call us adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.